Hello and welcome to Tom Meets Interesting People. This is the podcast where I meet everyone from voice actors to nuclear engineers to talk about their work, their projects and their processes. My guest today is August Aguilar, who is an independent filmmaker and podcaster and the creator of Strange Films Studios, a production company that is passionate about creating horror and bizarre stories through film and comic books. Strange Films is currently planning for The Gifted, their latest film starring Ginger Lynn ALLEN, but are most well known for The Lion's Den, a short film that has over 1.5 million views on YouTube. Now, the origin of Strange Films could almost be a movie in itself. August, you were working at a local film studio in Knoxville and you see an ad to submit a short horror film to the Knoxville Horror Film Festival. You team up with your father and you create There's Something Down the Road. And I'm going to imagine this was the jumpstart to Strange Films. So what was behind that submission? Have you always wanted to be a filmmaker, or was it more of a sort of spur of the thing moment that led to something that you seem very, very passionate about?
Yeah. Thanks, Tom, for having me on the show. It's one of those things where I've always been very, very passionate about filmmaking, movies in general, being a writer, being just super creative. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always writing like pages and pages and pages of stories. I had a little home camera that I was making little home movies with. As I was getting older in high school and in college, in high school, I was making movies with my friends. And then in college, I really studied radio, film, and television. I was a mass communications major, so I was really kind of learning all like the actual process of how to edit, how to shoot, how to do all those different things as a filmmaker. But I never really took it serious because you're 20, 21, and you're just hanging out, whatever. I had a girlfriend at the time that I was super serious about, so it was kind of just like I just kind of was getting by with classes. I was like I wasn't failing or anything. I was just getting my grade, going out and going home. And really the only film I took that very serious with was my very last film before I graduated. It was just like, if you watch it now, you can really tell like the very beginnings of Strange Films directing and writing and shots and all that stuff. But again, it's very, I didn't really know what I was doing. So 2 years later, I wasn't making anything. I was just, a lot of things were going on in my personal life. And I moved from my town that I was growing up in. I moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. So it was actually a television news station I was working at, and I saw that ad. And, it just kind of sparked that, background of me again, that interest, that passion. I was like, man, I need to because I've always was like thinking about, I want to make a movie again, but I never had the gear, my own gear or the drive. I didn't really know what to do. I just kind of was like, that would be cool, if I had the money or something. And then, I just saw that ad. It was just kind of like, I want to do this. I need to do this because I was in that place in my mind with the news that I just knew I hated that. I wasn't happy. I was working all these overnight shifts and I was just always by myself. I was new to town, so I didn't know anyone or had family around. So I was just like always by myself. And I think that just was like the calling card that said, this is something you need to do. Like, this is something you need to go for. And it just kind of awoken something in me. And right as I made that decision and paired up with my dad, it just kind of, everything started moving so fast. I wrote the script. I bought all my gear. I used like my tax return to buy some gear and everything. And I learned a bunch of things on YouTube that I maybe was lacking before. I had to rebrush up on stuff that I studied beforehand. And we just went and shot the movie, and it got in the festival. And after that, it was like I quit the job pretty shortly after I shot the movie, and I just started bartending just so I had some flexibility in my day. And I just found myself so much happier pursuing this creative dream. And then it really kind of took it took it to the next level when I saw that I got to the festival and everyone enjoyed the movie, and I was like, okay, I think we're on to something here. And then next thing you know, I flew up to Philadelphia and we shot the second movie, and everything just kept going and going and going and going. And now it's built into this thing I can't control anymore. It's huge. So you're trying to keep up with it, really.
It's really interesting because every creative that I've spoken to and everyone who's kind of forged their own path has said something kind of similar. You said two lines there. I need to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
I was happier afterwards. So, what is it? Is there anything specific about filmmaking that you absolutely love, or is it kind of just you have to do this, you can't do anything else?
I think it's two things, like definitely the filmmaking side of it, just because I know that's where my real passion lies in,
Mm.
I think I love just telling stories. I love being able to share a vision, share something that I have written and shot and directed, edited, everything, and then just share that to the world and hopefully get some enjoyment out of that, or get some really, feel something, whether it's horror or drama or whatever it is. You're creating something that's everlasting, so it's always going to be around, even after me. So I think that's really, really cool about filmmaking. And as a writer growing up, I just always thought telling stories is just really fun. And I love movies too, so
Yeah.
that just goes hand in hand. But I do think the other part of that is, when you say I need to do this, I do think as creatives in general, outside the filmmaking world, I think it's just really important that creatives have that outlet to dive into that world head on, because there's a few different types of creatives. I think there's some creatives as a hobbyist, which is great.
Yeah.
They like to dabble into it. Sometimes they can make some money off of it, or they just like to showcase it, whatever. It's a hobby. And then there's some that really need it as their main pipeline, like it's their passion. And it doesn't really matter about the results, whether it's monetized or, you know, on a level where it's getting all these views or anything like that. They're just doing it because it fuels them too much. And that's the only thing that they've always been satisfied with in life, I think. And I definitely think there's a balance you can find in that world too, having either a job or a family or both, and all these different things. But I definitely think, like, as creatives who are super passionate about something, they say, I need to do this.
Yeah.
I think it goes for all fields of creativity. There's something that just drives them, and it's all they can think about. It's all they feel, it's like what excites them the most. And that's kind of where I'm at with all this.
Yeah. And of course, you share that with your father as well, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. And it's great because me and my dad, we lived separately for most of my life. And so he's always up in Philly and I was always down here in Tennessee. And, when I got older, I started visiting him more on my own, and we got a lot closer and everything. But when we did this film together and just started Strange Films, like, we just ended up becoming really, really close. And it sparked something inside him that he likes to say to me all the time that he never thought he could ever do, which he loves writing too. He loves movies. He loves, the idea of making a movie. So it just sparked something, I think, for both me and him that made us grow a lot closer, and it's made it much more exciting. And it's we're two little psychos just talking about movies and what to make next and what we're gonna do, and all these plans. But it's a lot of fun, and we're both really grateful for the journey so far.
Mhm. Yeah. Is there anything more fun than being two little psychos making horror?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, this brings me to my next question. Why horror as opposed to any other genre? What is it about horror that you absolutely, this is what you love, this is what you want to work in?
I think that was all kind of like it just kind of happened to be, really. Like, I never liked horror movies growing up. I was always scared of them, and I started really getting curious about them in high school, and then in college I started really watching them more and whatnot. And now I love horror movies. I love
Yeah.
watching everything that comes out. But I think it just happened to be that Universal thing where the Universal was like, "Hey, this is a Knoxville Horror Film Festival," and I was like, "Horror? Well, I think that would be fun." And Frank, my dad, he is a big horror fan, always has been.
Yeah.
So, like, that kind of sparked him. And when we did it, and we realized how much fun a horror movie could be,
Yeah.
and obviously there's a huge horror scene out there, especially even our local community. Like, it just kind of was like, oh, this is really popular and this is really fun, and we can get really weird and cool and scary and just unnerving a little bit. And I think just kind of as we started doing more horror movies, that's kind of what we were known for,
Yeah.
doing horror movies. And a lot of people still think like, oh, we do only horror, which is 80% true, but we do a lot of other stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, I've done comedies, I've done action, I've done drama, I've done documentaries, I do music videos, I do everything. I love every kind of genre, but it's the horror genre is really popular. It's really fun, and it is exciting to kind of just come up with a weird concept, and
Yeah.
just like, how can I make this into a movie and disturb people, or just whatever. And it's just a lot of fun. And horror is that forgiving genre too.
Yeah.
It can be super cheesy, it can be like low budget, but people love it, and it can be really, really well done and indie and artistic, and people praise it. So it's just all these different waves of fandom and support behind the field. And I just think we just kind of fell into it. And I love it. I love being in the scene. And I think it's really cool that we're known for making cool horror movies.
Yeah. No, totally. Because I watched He Comes to Kill last night, which is one of your feature films. I absolutely loved it. I'm very easily scared, but it reminds me of that same thrill I get when I go on a roller coaster. I can kind of experience that level of fear that comes with a scary situation, but I'm still at home and I'm safe and nothing's going to happen. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing we like to do with our horror movies too is we definitely don't go on any sort of too much of an intense ride. We like to be quirky, I'm sure, as you could tell with He Comes to Kill, it's almost like a horror comedy. There's a lot of comedy moments into it. There's a lot of weird, wacky stuff going on, quirky things. And that's part of our signature charm. If you watch all of our movies consistently, you'll see something either quirky or funny or whatever. And I think it's just more of like us trying to tap into like the darkest moment of the film, but at the same time bring you back in to feel like you're comfortable watching what's going on, because there is like that kind of character or quirky moment, and something you're just like having a thrill with, like a roller coaster. Like you're building to that intense moment, and then you come down, and then you're cruising a little bit, and you're having fun with it. It's funny or whatever. So but yeah, we definitely, I mean, being comfortable and watching things at home and whatnot is always great. That's why we always try to bring our stuff to YouTube and everything. That way anyone can watch anytime. And I definitely just think we try to balance that level of people who don't like horror would still enjoy it, and people who love horror would hopefully really appreciate it.
Because it also made it more accessible to me as well.
Yeah,
because I am a scaredy cat. I got terrified at a Simpsons episode, one of the Halloween episodes. Absolutely scared the living daylights out of me when I was 6, and I refused to watch it until I was about 7 or 8 afterwards. Because in He Comes to Kill, you've got the bookstore owner that's just sort of dancing along. That's kind of hilarious. The line as well that I thought was kind of funny in that moment. Breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your nose. That made me giggle. So it's obviously something that you enjoy throwing in into your films.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important, just to kind of have that balance. It also depends on the film, what we're making and whatnot. But I just, because we have, as much as we like horror stuff, like I said, we're always laughing, we're always having fun, we're always goofing around. So it's nice to have some of that charm into our work. So it's not just always so serious. Because one thing that we like to do when we're shooting is we like to just have fun. It's a lot of like improv, it's a lot of ad-libbing, it's a lot of, if we were at a location and we see something cool that we didn't think about in the script, we're like, oh, we got to use that. That looks awesome, and we give the actors a lot of creative freedom. Just say, hey, this script is a template. As long as you're kind of hitting the points that we need to hit, you can kind of deliver this however you want or add to it or whatever. So like that line with breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. That with Jordan, he improv that whole thing. And it was just like a nice because I'm giving him trust to deliver something really, really intense. But he can also add that little flair of, just quirkiness. And like when we saw that in the theater, when we did our premiere, everyone laughed at that too. And that was great because this was like a super intense moment of the film. But I think it's just more about, we're not so hung up on everything has to be so specific, everything has to be so serious. We're just like, hey, we're here to have fun. We're going to make a movie, and as long as we're hitting what we're trying to accomplish, if we can add some extra flair into that, that's going to make this a really fun ride, then I think that's our
Yeah.
that's like our little golden recipe. So
Yeah.
it's cool when we can do stuff like that. A lot of it's happy accidents and a lot of it's planned. So
I'm going to come back to that in a little bit as well, because I think you've probably hacked into my computer and read my notes, because that was going to be one of my questions regarding the script. So let's jump into the process now. And I mentioned in the intro, you've got your latest film that will be filming this summer. So we can kind of use that for context. Before we really dive into your process, though, can you introduce The Gifted to us?
Yeah, sure. So, The Gifted is coming out. It's our next feature film. It's starring Ginger Lynn ALLEN. So she's known for a lot of different things. In the 80s, she was a super big star in the adult entertainment industry. But she definitely has always been in the horror industry as well. So she's doing like horror conventions, indie horror. She worked with Rob Zombie on like Devil's Rejects and 31 and stuff like that. So, but Ginger Lynn, we met. Frank met her at a convention when we had our film Raven at a festival, and he's always been a fan of her. So they talked, and somehow he got her email and whatnot. So for about 8 months, he was in contact with her to get this, because he wanted her for this movie idea that he had. And for about 8 months, he just worked behind the scenes, getting that booked, and she finally came on to the project, and it's a really, really fun project. It's called The Gifted. It's pretty much about a woman who, her name's Barbara, who Ginger Lynn will be playing, and she has like this supernatural ability where she can control people through using like a charm. And when she controls people, she can control their own free will or actions or whatever. And a lot of it's also been used. A lot of that's been used for really bad stuff. Hurting people, stealing, whatever. And a lot of that she's done, as The Gifted breaks it down, 3 different stages of her life. So how it sets up is Barbara, who Ginger Lynn is, she's an older woman, and it's just too much. She spent her whole life hurting people, and all these things has happened to her, and she just wants to pretty much die, and she just wants to give up. But she gets told that there's this priest who can get rid of her powers if she just confesses her sins to the priest. So we open with her going to this priest, and the priest is a very, very odd character, we'll say that. And he's got an assembly in the church as well, and that congregation is very like out of this world. So it's a very, very bizarre scene. And so he says, all you have to do is confess your sins. And she's like, well, let me start from the beginning. So the film breaks down to Ginger as a little girl, and we kind of see where some of that stuff was happening in the beginning. And then there's a middle segment where Ginger's like a young woman, like in her 20s or 30s, and she's in a relationship, and you see some of that and what happens there. And then there's a third and final story where Ginger Lynn herself. It's the night before the church. So it's a whole like 3 different stories in one film, all tying together. And it's just we just see what Barbara went through her whole life with this power, and how she used it, or how she was manipulated to use it. And it's a really, really, it's a wild ride, and it's going to be horror and drama. So it's definitely a blend of both. Some comedy moments, of course, always, but it's going to be an interesting ride. We're shooting that in May. She's coming down here the 19th and 20th, and we're going to shoot her scenes. And then I'm going to be going up to Philadelphia probably like July or August, and we're going to shoot the last scenes up there, and then combine it all together. So it's gonna be cool.
Was there like a reason you picked going for the 3 time periods as opposed to just making it sort of one sort of linear narrative from start to beginning?
Well, this is my dad's project, because how we operate, he will write and produce things, and I write and produce things, and I direct everything. So, but this is his project that he wrote. But I think the mindset behind that is, we could have done like a linear piece with just Ginger Lynn and whatnot. but I think it's interesting for him to, because we always wanted to kind of do something like an anthology, like a feature with an anthology in it. And I think this is a close step to that. So it's a feature film with Ginger kind of telling a story, and we get to see 3 different stories in it, but it's all about the same character. So I think it's cool to see like one character go through 3 different transitions and figuring out, the audience is trying to figure out what's going on the entire time. So I just think it's probably just a different, interesting way to approach a film. All of our films are pretty much linear, and I think it's cool to kind of do more of a different approach to that, just through stages of time, and kind of tie it all in together as well. And what's cool about this film is it's actually tying into one of our previous films, Happy Mother's Day. It's kind of like, not, I wouldn't say a direct sequel, but it's more of like a spin-off of it, which is really going to be fun for people who are fans of our work.
Yeah. So did your dad come to you like with the idea kind of already formed, and then it built from that? What did that look like from like that first synaptic spark to the stage we're at now and the stage we will be in the future?
Yeah, he always pitches ideas to me, and this is an idea. He kind of had 2 different ideas that ended up kind of blending together on this one, but one definitely was, he had this idea of a priest and someone confessing their sins to the priest, and the anthology idea was in the works of that. So it was kind of like, yeah, he had this idea of this priest, and he kind of knew where he wanted to go with that, but he didn't know exactly what the stories were going to be like. And then once Ginger Lynn was on board, that idea was still there, but he kind of combined another idea he had that revolves around the supernatural element, which is her having powers and stuff. That wasn't really in the original draft of things. So I came up to Philly back in December because we had to shoot another project of ours and finish up. And every time we get together, we always have a night where we just, relax with some drinks and hang out, and we talk shop about everything. And we just really started talking about The Gifted because Ginger Lynn was already on board at this point, and we haven't sent her the script. So we were like, we got to get this script done. And we're like, time is of the essence. So we just kind of hashed out everything, all his ideas, all my ideas. He asked me about that supernatural element, from his other idea. He's like, do you think that's quirky? Do you think it will work? And I was like, I think that's awesome. I think it will be really cool. And that's kind of how we just formed exactly what those stories would look like, how we would tie it into our universe, how we would flow, and how we would shoot the whole thing between Knoxville and Philadelphia. So pretty much like once we got together and did all that, everything became so clear. We got the script written within a couple of weeks. We sent it off. She loved it, and everything was all good. We booked everything since. So I think it's interesting because you never really know what you're going to get until you get to it. So it's like, so even with this, we had all these ideas finally on paper. We sent it that way. We got everything in motion. We're booking everything. And then I'm like, okay, I got to shoot a teaser trailer for this thing because I need to get people excited for what's to come. So one of my actors, Joe Casterline, he was in He Comes to Kill, he was Chief Sanders of the movie. He's going to be the priest in The Gifted. So we shot a teaser trailer with him just this last Wednesday. And even it's like once you're shooting like right then and there and you're talking about the priest, you're in that character and you're just trying to figure out his backstory, trying to figure out what's going to happen in the final film, new ideas emerge, new like understandings, take place. And you're just like, oh, this is what we're going for with this priest. Now I kind of have a better picture of what it's going to look like. And I think there's even some added new ideas that's going to make this film even better just because we were able to kind of really workshop that idea right then and there. When you get on set, that just happens a lot because you got everyone in the same room and you're trying to work the scene out, and then you get all these different inspirations and people suggesting things, and then that's kind of how a film takes place. So, I think things even after we shoot with Ginger and the scenes in Philly, I think even though we've got a really good idea of how this thing is going to look like, I think it's going to still evolve even more by the time this is all said and done.
Yeah, I do want to come back to that point as well with like what it's going to look like after it's done and the sort of relationship between your cast and the script itself. But before we go to that, I do want to also talk about funding as well, because you've
Yeah.
got an Indiegogo page that you want. We want to. At the time of this, we're halfway through it already. So by the time this episode goes out, it's already
Mhm.
kind of happened. So let's talk about the funding kind of itself. How do you even approach that?
It's a tough line to walk. I mean, we're in a great time that indie film is very thriving, and there's
Mm,
a lot of support that goes into it, especially horror. So it's not uncommon to see filmmakers like myself who are either experienced or not even too experienced, but they do crowdfunding campaigns for their projects. Um, I think it's always weird where it's kind of like, hey guys, we're making a movie and we need your help if you want to throw in some money to help us make it. Um, but we're at that point now where we've never asked people to fund our movies.
yeah,
We've always funded by ourselves, and like we love doing it. It's like we're not expecting money back, or anything like that. But we do it because we love it.
yeah,
But with this project in particular, since it's so big and also the talent does cost pretty much a majority of the budget, it's I thought we all thought it was the right time to say, okay, we're going to be that we're going to be the filmmakers who present a crowdfunding campaign.
yeah,
We're going to make it worthwhile. We're going to present some great rewards with that stuff, whether it's a shirt or a Blu-ray or a signed thing from Ginger Lynn, or you can even be a walk-on role of the movie and stuff like that. We're going to make it worth it, and we're going to just see how much support we can get with this, because we do have a fan base now. We do have a
yeah,
lot of support with what we do. I can say, given this, since this is our first crowdfunding for a movie, I've done crowdfunding through Kickstarter for my comic books and whatnot, and those have all been overfunded and everything. I've always had a success with all that stuff, but for the movie, since we had a high budget and everything, I mean, not too high, it was $7,000 is what we were looking for. My experience with this first crowdfunding campaign is not going the way I was expecting. It's definitely not like we're not getting anything. We've got a few thousand going in, but it's a learning process, and I take everything as a learning experience. We have to kind of figure out, okay, how do we market the campaign if we're going to do it again next time?
yeah,
What kind of rewards are people even looking for? Is it the economy right now? Is it this? Is it that? Who's on board as far as talent? Who's all helping promote this thing? It's a lot of different moving parts, and I just think I think if you're in the right mindset with it, and you're trying to give back as much as like you're trying to put in, I think it's worth doing.
yeah,
We're definitely not someone who are like, hey, let's just get your money because this and because we have an idea. Like, this thing is going to happen no matter what.
yeah,
Like, the film's going to come out, and we have everything booked. I mean, we've got everything ready to go. So it's just one of these things where even if we're going to pay out of pocket again to do this, we want to show people like we're true to our word.
yeah,
We're presenting projects, we're presenting ideas, and we're in a place that, yes, you could help us support. You can, if you want to keep seeing strange films grow, like, you are in a place that could help us out doing that. And we're confident asking that thing now. It's not
yeah,
for everything, but for these bigger projects, or if you're doing like a Patreon or whatever, like, we're confident with like saying, hey, this is what we do now. We're at that point. But even if you fund or not fund, we're still going to bring you content. We're
yeah.
still going to bring you an exciting project, and we're still going to be thrilled about it. So it's definitely an interesting concept and experience. But yeah, I'm happy to try. Definitely.
Yeah, and don't be too hard on yourself either, because I'm on the Indiegogo page now. You still got 20 days left,
Yeah, for
35%
sure.
already, so that's good. Um,
Yeah,
I think you can make it
yeah.
up.
Yeah, I think like usually, I know like the last week is usually a nice little push,
Yeah,
last few days and whatnot. We have a couple different things, like the teaser trailer. I'm hoping is going to excite people. I'm actually, right after this, I'm actually doing a podcast with Ginger Lynn, so we'll
nice.
have that out and hopefully kind of get some excitement with that. So I think there's a couple different things that we're trying to do a last push with. We're going to try to add a couple of last minute perks, like some signed stuff from Ginger and all that. But yeah, I mean, like, for what it is, our first time, what we got, I'm okay with
Yeah,
the process and all that. Definitely, at least we're going to be covering most of Ginger's expenses and whatnot. But Yeah, it's just one of those things, because you look, that's another part. Like when you're in this kind of field, you're always trying to compare yourself with other filmmakers or other like crowdfunding campaigns or stuff like that. So you see another indie filmmaker that's got like a crowdfunding campaign. It's like $30,000 funded. You're like, wow, how'd you do that? I have the same perks as you do, and we've got a cool talent. We've got a cool story, So I don't get it sometimes. I do think I don't know. It depends, I guess, on maybe who you have on or whatnot. But I definitely, I'm not mad about the situation. I think we got 20 days left as of today.
Yeah.
We got a good chunk of change going into it right now, so we'll see what happens. Either way, like I said, The Gifted will be made, and we're definitely very excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And it's quite right that like it's going into like sort of talent and actually paying people for their time. Because that's a big thing that we have like in any kind of creative industry, whether it is filmmaking or podcasting, is people are giving up their time and not being paid. So it's good people are getting paid. Let's now talk about no budget. This is something that I know that you do, and you do it very, very well.
Thank you.
So how do you do it without all of that extra stuff that comes with the money?
Yeah, this is a very, like, I think it's important to know, because I get a lot of questions all the time from people who don't make movies or whatnot. They're like, how do I make a movie? Or they'll send me a script and it's like, it's like, yo, dude, like this is, you need like $1 million to make this. It's like, I think it's important to know when it comes to no budget filmmaking and wanting to make a movie, you have to really think, like, keep it simple, keep it simple and keep it to your own, like, constraints of like what you have available to you. So it's like when it comes to writing, like when I write a script, I write in a way where I know I could physically film it with my two hands, because I shoot most of my projects. I've had one project, I think someone's filmed the entire thing for me. So everything else is me just understanding if I had to go out with my own camera, I could shoot this.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a whole difference itself, because you're like, I don't need anybody else. I don't need like a huge budget or a crew. I mean, it's nice to have a crew to help audio and lights and stuff. But even if I couldn't have that, I know I can film this. So that's one thing. And then the other part of it is keep it simple, where it's like, okay, I have a barn in the backyard or something. If whoever has, I have this location I have access to, I have that location I have access to. My friend's dad owns that business, and he said we could film there if we wanted to. I've got two friends who've done a little bit of acting, or I've got a family member who's always wanted to act, whatever that looks like. If you can just find those things that you have access to and people who want to help you, or find a local film community and say, hey, I'm doing this and I need some ABC. People are going to help you do that. And then it's all about being clever with the writing. So if you're filming something in that barn or whatever, you can make a whole film all in that barn or outside the barn. But you have to like just be clever about what you're trying to tell. Is it a horror movie? Is it a drama movie? Is it a comedy? Are you going to do whatever you're going to do? Just get creative with what you can do inside that barn or outside that barn. So, and that's just an example. Like I said, I get really ambitious with my writing.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid to go a little like bigger, but it's definitely I always try to keep it like, okay, I know I can film here, and this might be a little tough, but I have experience with that and we can do it. So I think it's just a matter of just trying to be clever and simple and just being logical about the situation. If you don't have budget, you don't need a budget. If you need props, really my budget always went to like props or makeup or, renting a place if I had to, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just a matter of just being simple, clever, and logical about your situation, and and having fun with it too. Don't get so stressed out about the process of making a movie, because it's not like, it is stressful, but it's not impossible. Anybody can make a movie. You can make a movie with your phone. It's like it's insane how easy and accessible it is now. You can learn so much on YouTube and everything. So no budget, no problem.
Yeah. Is that, you talked about just using a barn. Is that kind of what you did for the Lions then? You just had that location nearby you?
Yeah, we did. We had access to the Lions, the barn, pretty much a big ranch home. And yeah, she was like, yeah, just film the whole, we can film the whole thing. And that, what was tricky about that was we filmed it right in the middle of COVID. So it was like everything was on lockdown. We weren't even supposed to be hanging out or whatever. Like, the whole thing was like, got to have up to 10 people, I think, in a group or something. So I was like, okay, let's do me, 5 cast members, and 4 crew, and that was our 10 people. And we went out in the lines that barns. It was all outside too, and we just shot the whole movie there. And yeah, you just sometimes you just find that location and you're like, oh, that'd be cool. And like, well, you can film here. All right, done.
Yeah.
I wrote the whole script around that location.
Something that I'm noticing as well is to get things done, whether it is filmmaking or podcasting or any kind of industry where you are collaborating and working with others, the best thing to do is just ask, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like sales. I mean, I hate sales, but it's like you're never going to get the sale if you don't ask,
Yeah.
So, it's the same thing with a podcast. I reach out to guests all the time and say, hey, would you like to be on my podcast? And you might have a big percentage of no's, but you're going to have someone that says yes. And recently I've had a few really exciting yeses. So I'm like, okay, cool, but filmmaking especially, yeah, if you're looking for a location, I'm that kind of guy. I'll walk into a bar, I'll walk into a place and say, hey, my name's August. I'm a filmmaker here. We're wanting to shoot a movie. I love this location. Is there any way we could, maybe shoot here? And, there's going to be places that are a little bit more strict about it.
Yeah.
And there's going to be places that are like, wow, that sounds really cool. Yeah, absolutely. And, I've had both. And you just never know, especially if you just like, I'm really active on Facebook because that's kind of how I started this whole thing. And I'm in a bunch of different film groups and whatnot. So anytime I'm looking for any kind of location or resource for a project, that's really the first place I go. Hey, does anyone know this, or does anyone have access to that? And half the time I'll get my answers right then and there, and I get everything booked from there. But then if it's me having to walk around or go drive by something or location scout myself, like, yeah, you just got to ask, and you'll be surprised how many yeses you'll get, in that kind of world. I don't, you stay away from like the big corporate stuff because that's all, strict. But if your local businesses, your local people that and public access places, you shouldn't have any problem trying to find something you're looking for.
Yeah, and you're supporting each other, like you just said, supporting local businesses.
For sure, and we love to do that. We've worked with so many local businesses that we put in the credits and give shout outs to, and we'll have like premiere parties at the local businesses, stuff like that. Like that's really cool too, because it kind of comes back to them. They get to be featured in something and they're excited, and then you get a crowd there and you're like, oh yeah, this is great. So yeah, you definitely, if you can support them and provide some sort of like credit, or say, hey, we'll do a premiere party here or something like that. Or if you have like something you want us to put in the background of this movie or something like that, you can always do stuff like that, which is always fun too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's go back now to talking about the characters and the script. When you're casting for a role, how does it happen? Like, do you have, when you're writing, a potential character, a potential actor in mind that would fit that character properly? Or is there kind of like a middle ground between what you're bringing to the table and what they're bringing to the table? In other words, kind of like, how does it work? And like, what do you tend to look for?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So it's, like when you're writing, if you don't have anyone in mind at first when you're writing, everything kind of ends up being like mysterious. You're trying to figure out what this character is, who could play that, how that character interacts in that world. And then what's exciting about the writing process is once you really understand your character, you can just be crazy with it. I love pushing my character to a place where I always like to say, my character will do something or say something in this film that I would not normally see in the real world, which is cool to me because you can just be weird or nasty or funny or whatever. You can play off that. So when you're doing it like that, when you're trying to find someone to fit that role, that gets a little challenging because you're going to have a lot of submissions coming through. Again, Facebook or email or whatever, you do these casting calls and you're going to have a lot of people coming through and say, oh, I want to audition for that character or this and that. But you kind of have like an idea of what this character is going to be like on screen. So when you're seeing a bunch of different people coming through, you're like, I don't know if that person could be really be great, but then you find out they're not so great for that role or something. So it's a lot of kind of figuring that out. But once you like, if you've worked with someone before and you think they would be great for a character, that's what's cool when writing a project, knowing who you want for that role, because you know their mannerisms, you know their ideas, you know like how they talk and what their acting range is and stuff like that. Like currently I'm writing a TV series, and one of my guys, Jordan, who played He Comes to Kill, who played Mark and He Comes to Kill, I know like how wild he was in that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm playing off a little bit of that going into this. So same thing with Joe Castelline. He's a great example too. Like I've now working with him, I know kind of like how great of an actor he is, and you know, and his range on some of that stuff. So it's like I can really apply him into some of these scripts I'm writing now. So, and we do work with a lot of people that we've worked with before just because they blow our socks off. You know, they're like super, super impressive, very, very talented and professional, and they bring something to the table that you just like, even on, it's better than what's on paper, because you're like, wow, like this is even cooler than I imagined. But we always love to work with new talent. So that's when we find that new talent, you know, it's definitely a lot of conversations. Is this the right role for you? Is this, you know, going to be a good fit? You know, whatever. Joe is another example of that, because in He Comes to Kill, he originally was supposed to just be a very minor character, but when we had some dropouts, he advocated himself to be the Chief Sanders.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like hesitant about it. And we talked about this on my podcast. I was like, I don't know, because I've always saw him in these really drama and comedy roles. And Chief Sanders was supposed to be like kind of this like super serious guy and all these like intimidating things about him. And, you know, he was like, no, I can do it. And I was like, okay. So I got him. And I mean, the thing is, Chief Sanders ended up being a completely different character.
Yeah.
But it ended up being so much better than what I had in mind. And I didn't know what I was going to get out of Joe. So seeing what he did with that character, it just floored me. Super, super exciting, super funny, super intense. And you know, he became a fan favorite out of that film. And I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan of Joe now.
Yeah.
And he's one of my good buddies. I love hanging out with that guy. And so, you know, it's just one of those things. Like sometimes you get something that you're not expecting. And yeah, you just have to kind of figure out that either working with them or having those conversations beforehand. But once you do establish a good connection with someone, it's really fun writing them into future projects.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was going to ask about changes from script to shooting, like, because I always kind of assume once the script is wrote, that kind of acts as your, for want of a better phrase, your playbook, and you kind of have to stick to that. But it sounds like things change and things just adapt as new people bring new stuff to the table.
Yeah, always, man. I'd say every script I've ever written, every film we've ever done, it's always the original version was different, and
Yeah.
whether it's a minor way or a major way. But um, it's interesting because a lot of it can be out of your control. A lot of it's just, you know, you get there and you're shooting, and it's just like either maybe the talent's not there with it, or it's just like something's just not working the way you had in mind. So it's a lot of variables, and I think that the talent does have to do a lot with it, because again, if especially a lot more positive experiences than negative. But if you have someone who's just bringing something really, really interesting and engaging and fun, you're like, oh wow, this is adding a lot to this movie, and then that kind of can even pivot a little bit of how the rest of the movie will go, because you see something, you're like, that I love that.
Yeah.
Let's keep that going into the rest of the movie, you know, something like that. But then like He Comes to Kill, we I that movie, as great as it came out, I had so many issues going into it, just because I had people I would cast, and then you know, I announced their casting, and then they'd come back at me and say, I'm sorry, I can't do the role because of XYZ. And it's like, well, dude, we're about to shoot. It's like, you know, so I had to like recast, you know, a week before we shot. I had to, you know, there was a bunch of different things like that. Like we had someone drop out after we shot their scene. He was supposed to be a major character for the rest of the movie. So that's kind of, rewriting the entire rest of the film, like the week of shooting and stuff like that, and figuring that out. You get stuff like that happens, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches and kind of think the most clever way to get through that. But yeah, it evolves. It always evolves. It's like it's an untamed beast, and you just kind of have to be the best circus leader you can be, and try to keep it all together and let the story still tell, and just have fun with it again, because we're not Hollywood studios. We're not paying everybody. We're not getting paid to do it. We're just like passionate, creative people trying to tell a cool story, and you have to take the challenges with that. You have to roll with the punches, and it can get out of control, or it can be really stressful. But if you can just work through that and get through it and get it all back together, then that's where you're like, wow, okay, we pulled that off, and it turned out even better than we imagined. That's cool.
The show must go on, mustn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And now, when you are, let's now sort of zero in on the film set itself. I'm assuming you can't just rock up and record. So tell me all about kind of like the film set and what's happening there. Like, explain it to me as if I was an alien who's never heard of a movie, just visiting Earth for the first time. How would you describe that environment?
Well, film sets are, they're, you get there, depending on where you're at, if it's if it's like a business or something, and you only have like 8 hours or 6 hours to shoot something or whatever it is, like, you're like, okay, we have X amount of time, we have to do this, we have to get all of our stuff done out the door by this time. So it's kind of like, I don't know, the first bit of it is always me getting everyone there, kind of starting to get people in place, kind of like, it's really about 30, 45 minutes, or even an hour of just kind of mentally preparing and getting physically ready to shoot, make sure all the gear is ready, making sure the actors are good, all the makeup's done, setting people up in their right places and things like that. And then once it comes down to it, it's like you kind of just have to start, and when you're not working with a huge crew, and you're not working with huge cameras, if you've got a DSLR, which is what I shoot with primarily, you can just like run and gun. Yeah, there you go.
I need to bring this onto the podcast, but if you watch it on YouTube, I just literally put a camera in front of the camera. There you go.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, I've got a GH5 and I love that thing, but it's perfect for running and gunning. So, if you got the time to set up everything properly, then you're good. You just got to start hitting record and framing everything up and rolling with it. But there are some places where you do have to kind of go with the guerrilla style filmmaking and just run and gun. Like, hey, we're not even probably supposed to be here, but let's start shooting, So, like, we shot at a cemetery the other day, and I was like, I kept thinking we're going to get run off, because I was like, I don't know if we're even supposed to be here, but it's too good of a location to pass up, and we got to get this done. So we got Joe dressed up as a bishop, and we got like me and two other guys, and I got the camera. I'm like, all right, let's just keep rolling. Let's keep going. And stuff like that. It's a little bit of a thrill, you're like, all right, but yeah, when it comes to a set, like a proper set, it's just a matter of kind of delegating your crew, getting everything set up properly, getting yourself mentally and physically prepared for what you're about to do, being very, very communicative with everyone, and then just taking that deep breath and just hitting record after you get the first thing framed up, and you're like, all right, action, and you just start. And I say, like, the first, like, for me, always the first few takes, the first like 15, 20 minutes of shooting, it's kind of awkward. It's like just like trying to find your footing, like, like, you're not as confident about it because you're just nervous. You're just nervous about the whole thing. Make sure you're doing a good job and getting it done. My dog's barking now. But then once the ball starts rolling, and once it's like really going and everyone's getting more and more loose, then it's like, it's just nonstop. You're like, you'll be surprised how fast you're moving and how much stuff you're getting done in that time. So it's cool. Yeah, you just a matter of starting.
And of course, once they've given you sort of everything that they have, you've got all of your footage. Obviously, the film doesn't edit itself together, and all of the post-production stuff doesn't happen on its own. So can you walk me through everything that happens there.
Yeah, I mean, the post-production stuff is probably the toughest. I mean, because you can have a really, really fantastic shoot. You can, or you think you have a fantastic shoot and you don't get some of the things that you really needed, or you miss something, or you just didn't get that right shot or angle or the dialogue or whatever. You miss something that's going to help. That's going to hurt, make it a challenge for post. I've seen people have great footage and great talent, but they can't edit something well. I've seen filmmakers that have that issue. And, because post-production is very, very tough. It's very tedious. It's a long process. You're working with, tons and tons and tons of different footage, audio, sound effects, music, score, all that stuff, and title cards and everything. And you got to make sure that you're telling the story you want to tell, putting it together in a creative way, and making it super engaging from start to finish if you can. So it can be stressful. It's a lot of time. I'm sitting on the computer for hours and hours and hours just editing. You hear that same clip that goes like, "Oh, this is getting juicy. This is getting juicy. This is getting juicy," like over and over and over and over and over, because you're trying to get that right take, that right angle, the right splice. So it's just like you just hear that over and over again. But I love editing. I really do. I've won best editing like a few times now, and I think because I take pride in my editing, I get really excited about editing. I think even though it's probably the stressful part about the whole thing, I get really excited about doing it. But every time I shoot, I usually take about 1 to 2 weeks before I start, because it's just kind of like that. Okay, this is gonna take a lot out of me, so I kind of just take a break. I let myself decompress from the shoot, and I also, when I shoot, I kind of shoot in mind of how I'm editing, also kind of like how I want to put it together. So I'm also kind of painting a mental picture of what I think the film will look like. So when it comes down to getting the footage, and the first day of editing is always sorting the footage out, just kind of putting everything in its own boxes and all that stuff. But once it comes down to actually laying down everything, I always just do a really, really rough layout of the whole film, just to kind of like, okay, this is how I imagined it, and then it kind of goes through waves. So you got the rough layout, the little bit of refined layout, then the actual tightening up on all that, making sure the audio is good and all that, and then adding the sound effects, the score, the music, and title cards and all that. So once that's all done, ready to go, and however long that takes, you put it out there, and then it's all about marketing. Just market the hell out of it. And I try to market pretty heavy, even from the beginning, from behind the scenes to shooting to more behind the scenes to teaser trailers, and then posters, and then the marketing through social media and clips and interviews and all that stuff like that. So we do a pretty good job of the marketing side of things, but it's a long and challenging process, and a lot of people don't understand how much work that actually goes into that part of the filming.
I know future me, while editing this episode, is going to be at this point now and just thinking, I should message August and be like, how much does he charge to edit an episode of this? Because I've got 3 shots. I've got your view, my view, and then the split screen that I make that I switch back to. And I've only got 3, and that takes me forever and a day.
Yeah.
You have 3 billion shots or thereabouts to deal with. So what do you charge?
Hit me up, we'll talk. But no, it's true. I mean, because I edit my podcast too, and it's the same deal where I do these virtual ones. I make it a point where I split it. I do the split screen for the intro, and then it's one-on-one for each, for whoever's talking. And that is tedious itself too, because you got to get to those points and cut and splice and all those things and clean up anything that's a little bit messy or whatnot. But once you edit long enough, it gets a little. It's a lot easier. It's just a little bit of time, but I can zip through it real quick on those kinds of projects. But the films though, especially when I had He Comes to Kill, my God, because that was my longest film, and just so many pieces went into that. It made me feel like my computer was crashing, because it just was so much on my computer. I was shooting all 4K too. It was a lot, but editing is a beast. I hats off to anyone who can edit, especially Good
You are the
editing.
saviors of all of us in audio, in visual. You are our saviors. We love you. We absolutely love you. Thank you for that. That was very much a filmmaking 101. So I have a bit of a tradition that I like to end every episode with. These questions come from the Prost questionnaire, which were then later adapted by Bernard Pivot, later by the late, great James Lipton, and now I present my Boo, There's Something Behind You adaptation to you.
Okay.
What is your favourite word?
My favorite word?
Yeah, your favourite word.
Ooh. Man, that's a tough question. Oh man, I don't know. I've never been asked that before. I like exquisite. That's
Exquisite.
a cool word. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a cool word. I don't know. I say, I mean, if you're thinking fancy words, I like exquisite. I think that's a cool word. But I don't know. I just like to. I don't know. I like to say "right on" a lot. It's not a really. It's a phrase, but I don't know. I don't really have a favorite word, to be honest. I like exquisite. That's a cool word, but I don't know if I've got a favorite one. That's a good question though.
All right.
I don't want to leave too much dead air on the
show. What is your least favorite word?
Ooh, well, I don't know if it's technically a word, but I hate when people just say K. Like if I'm getting a text and it says just K. Oh, it drives me so mad. I don't care if you're my mom, my best friend, or whatever. If you're someone I don't know and you say K, there's a good chance I don't want to talk to you again. Like I get so mad when someone just says K. And I'm like, okay. You could just say okay. I would be okay with that. Like, that's fine, but K? Ooh. So yeah, it's another phrase there, K.
For me on Facebook, it's that thumbs up.
Oh yeah.
It's just
yeah. I feel like I might have done that to you.
Maybe I'll have a look. I'll have a look later on, and then that will decide how good the edit is.
Yeah, there you go. No, I don't like that either. And it's funny because sometimes I'll use that and I go, I'm doing the one thing I don't like doing on Facebook.
Yeah, no, totally. What engages you?
Oh, what engages me? People usually, just connections, and I just thrive off. I'm a very what's the word I'm looking? Now, just a very I have to be by myself a lot,
Introverted,
introverted. That's what I'm trying to think of. I'm a very introverted person, but at the same time, I need that extroverted side of me to come out because I get if I'm too introverted for too long, I get in a weird place, So I need that extroverted side of me to come out. So people really excite me, fuel me, whether it's friend, family, or just a social gathering somewhere, an event, something like that. Like I need to do that, and that excites me. That makes me look forward to things in the week and stuff like that too. So yeah, people, they inspire me. Everyone inspires me too. Like if I'm really connecting with someone, having a good time with someone, or I see someone that I really look up to doing really cool things, that just makes me want to be a better person, makes me want to be a better creative and all that stuff too. So people, I think that really engages me.
And what disengages you?
Negativity. I don't know. You see that. I mean, social media is a bad spot to be sometimes because you see a lot of it. But negativity, people who have bad attitudes and who can't back up a lot of the things they say. I deal with there's a lot of people in this area that will say that they're doing stuff and they never do it, and then they make a big deal about it and make excuses, or they blame everyone else for it. And it's like, I don't have time for that. I don't want to be around that. So yeah, I'm a very, very positive person. I like to try to be around positive people and stuff like that. And then when the world or people try to bring that down, that gets a little hairy. So I try to disengage that.
What sound or noise do you love?
I like the sound of rain, like rain outside, or even like white noise, like static TV or something like that. But I'd say honestly, every night I just love my fan, just hearing the fan, the ceiling fan, so I can go to sleep.
And what sound or noise do you hate?
Ooh, I do not like. I was gonna say screaming kids, but I got a screaming kid, so, so it's a little bad. But I don't know. I don't like just like those uncomfortable screechies, crawly sounds like like if you rub your hand on a car or something like that, you can kind of hear the slight like or like the on a glass or something like that. I don't know. There's like those squeaky, just like gets under your skin kind of sounds, so something like that.
Question 7 is everyone's favourite, and mine too. What is your favourite curse word?
Can I say it out on this show?
Please do, yes.
Fuck! I love saying fuck, dude. I have a foul mouth, dude. I really do. I can't help it either. It's just like in my vocabulary. I can turn it off, for stuff like this or work or whatever. But yeah, dude, if it's just free flowing, I'm like, what the fuck? Fuck this, fuck that, whatever. Like, it's just a fun word to use.
Yeah, like same. It's turned off when I'm podcasting.
Yes.
Save it for this one question. You're allowed one swear word in my podcasts, but the second this recording is off, I don't care.
yeah, exactly. It's like I'll even curse a lot, and not even because I'm trying to be mean or anything. It's just part of the vocabulary.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Question 8. What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
Oh, I'd love to be a musician if I could. I love music so much. I fiddled around the bass guitar for a long time. I still have it. I still try to pick it up when I can, but it's I'd love to be able to like really play guitar or something, like actual guitar or drums. I love drums. Just any sort of, if I could get like super, super good at a instrument, I would love to be a musician. I think that would be a wonderful, fun, world to explore for sure.
And what profession would you not like to do?
There's a lot of those. Probably, I don't know. Probably something like being like a doctor or something. I don't know. Just being something where it's like way above me. Like those super serious roles, or like a politician. God, that's probably I would hate to be a politician. Yeah, something like that. Politics or anything in the science realm. I'm not good at that stuff, but there's a lot. I could probably think of the dirtiest, nastiest job out there and be like, nah, that does not sound fun at all. But
Fair enough. Final question. If you could say only one statement to any one person, what would that statement be, and who would that person be?
I would say dream up a good life, and I would say that to my son, because I want him to know that you can chase anything you ever want to chase. You can create the life you want to create. And I think it's very, very important to tell people that, because we're just in this weird world where it's like you just condition so much as a kid. You got to follow the steps of life, which is school and then college and then get married and then with a job and have a kid and all these things, and be very, very traditional, and retire at 65. And that's not the case for everybody. It's not really the case for me. I mean, I have a son, and I had that corporate job, and I went to college and all these things, but a lot of that, most of my life was it was almost kind of conditioned into that. It was kind of like, this is what you got to do. And I just felt like I was never confident enough or had the support behind me to say, chase your dreams, go for what you want to do, Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important to understand that this world is not how it used to be decades ago. We live in a really exciting time where anybody can do anything and make a living off of it, or at least have it that makes them happy. And I think you just need to dream up that good life, dream up a life that you think is best for you, and find how you can get to that point, and just dare to be big and dare to dream and chase after what you love and want to do. And whether that's for your full-time passion or as a hobby, just you got to find that and figure out what's best for you and best for your path, not having someone else tell you what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing with your life.